Well, hello, friends. How are you today? This is Dr. Mack, welcoming you to another episode of the interface between science and scripture with me, your host, Mack Crayton III. So, as you saw in the topic, we are continuing on with our discussion title of Dissecting the Levitical Laws, and we are doing excerpts from my latest book titled Gender, Sex, and Sexuality, the Interface Between Science and Scripture. Okay. Published just this year, on February of this year. So this is the latest book. It is available to you on Amazon.com, or you can pick it up when you see me at book signings around your cities. All right. And so I'll just plug that right now since we're at the top and you're coming on in. So remember, tomorrow I will be at the African American Museum here in the city of New Orleans tomorrow evening for a wonderful event. As we know, the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and in awareness of mental health and mental wellness, there is an event tomorrow called Therapeutic Thursdays, and it's being sponsored by That's So NOLA Collective here and NOLA Black Mental Health Matters on tomorrow. So that's May 21st from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. is at the African American Museum here in the city of New Orleans, which is located at 1417 Governor Nichols Street here in the city of New Orleans. So you can Google it, the New Orleans African American Museum, and get there. They do ask that you RSVP, although the event is free. The event is free, and we'll have two speakers who will be leading the conversation on tomorrow. One is Pastor J. Christopher Johnson, well known here in the city of New Orleans as well as in the state of Louisiana. So join in. Hey, Timara, thanks for joining me on this evening, and also sponsoring or co-leading the conversation with Pastor J. Christopher Johnson is Danielle Burton, Dr. Danielle Burton. She's a licensed professional counselor. So come on out and we'll be talking about mental wellness, mental health in this month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it will be there. I will have a vendor table. So after the discussions, I will have my book, promoting my book, the first book, which is Brain, Mind, Soul, and Spirit, the Interface Between Science and Scripture, which speaks to the topic of mental health and mental wellness. So I'll have it available. I will have a couple of the other books with me as well. So if you desire to get one of those, you can do so as well. So tomorrow, 7 p.m., African American Museum, 1417 Governor Nichols Street here in the city of New Orleans. Warmth of the Mind, Therapeutic Thursday. All right, so we're going to jump in it, and I do hope to see you there. There will be a comfort bar there, so you can eat some refreshments and things before we get started in the conversation. So try to get there about 6:30, and enjoy all the good food. All right, so we have been talking in this book, Gender, Sex, and Sexuality, the Interface Between Science and Scripture. And I've been talking with you for the past 2 episodes on the Levitical Laws. And so that happens to be chapter 15 in the book. And what we're doing is contextualizing the scriptures themselves. What do we mean by contextualizing? Asking the question, why were these scriptures needed in the first place? Why were these rules or laws being put into place? Right? So we went and started by saying that unless something is happening with some frequency, there usually isn't a need for a rule or a law. Right? So in the case, say if there was never anyone breaking into a home, there would be no rules or law. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Excuse me. Okay, there would be no rules about burglary or breaking into someone's home. But when it started happening with frequency to deter that act, then laws were made. Uh-oh, here's another sneeze coming. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that. All right. So I don't know what got into the air that causes me to start sneezing. So we begin to contextualize by asking why were these needed. So we had two contextualizations that we've discussed already. One, we have to look at population regrowth. So we in the Bible, we go from Adam down to Noah. We know Noah in the great flood. After the flood, all humans, or during the flood, all human and animal population, all land-based life was destroyed, completely gone. So when the ark landed, Noah's sons, he had his 3 sons and their wives on the ark with him, as well as all the animals, and they were tasked with repopulating the entire earth. So I then started to merge in with you, and we had a conversation about population science. And in population science, it would say in order for a species, and we can begin to look at the propagation of a species, how can it survive? What numbers are needed? And a minimum number of 250 is cited as the minimum population size needed in order to sustain a population. Well, here we were really looking at 6 people because Noah and his wife were too old to have children. So it was left to the 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, to repopulate the entire earth. Okay? So to make sure the species was going to survive, they needed to procreate. They needed to have lots of children. Right? So remember, a pregnancy is 9 months for humans, right? So that's almost a year there in order to just have children. Also, there's the issue of fertility. So whether the women were fertile or the individuals would be fertile. And then the hazards of life. So there's illness, there are infections, there's slip and falls and, hurt yourself, kill yourself. There's drowning, there's lack of food. So a lot of things that came into play, particularly when there's a young population, that could prevent population growth. So in population science, we began to look at all of those things and look at a ratio or percentage of population growth, annual population growth. It was believed that it would be about 0.1 to 0.4% per year, which would be basically after the first year, the 3 women, hopefully all 3 of them would have been pregnant, right? And then after maybe 10 years, they would have increased the population from 6 to maybe about 15. But remember, for humans, we have a long childhood before we reach reproductive age. So the children would have to grow to the age where then they can contribute to repopulation. Prior to that, it would just be a matter of the 3 wives having a baby every year to try to increase those numbers. Okay, so that's one thing. So population regrowth was underway. According to scripture, by the time Moses was ready to lead the children out of Egypt, there had an army size of 600,000 men. Now, according to, and from Noah down to Moses, had elapsed 866 years. 16 generations had elapsed in that time period. So 866 years, by that time, according to population science, there should be at best or at most 500,000 people or 500,000 people on the earth, according to population growth, and that's using the higher estimates. Here we're saying there was 600,000 Israelites in the Israelite army. So according to science, that would have been 500,000 in the entire world, and that's from all 3 brothers, right? And so their sons, Ham gave rise to the Philistines and the Egyptians. Japheth gave rise to the Greeks and Romans. And then Shem was the progenitor that led down through the Egyptians the Israelites and down to Moses. So they were spread around, but the scripture is saying there was 600,000 Israelites. So the numbers don't jive between science and the scripture. And so that's what we talk about in the book. The interface between science and scripture, whether they agree, where they don't agree, right? So according to science, it would not have been possible for the Israelite to be that large, and that was just counting the men. So with the women and children, there should have been 2 to 3 million people, or Israelites. And again, that is 3 times or 4 times more people. No, actually 6 times, from 4 to 6 times more people on the earth than science would have posed, right? So we then say, well, if there was a miracle or divine intervention, such as God making a promise to the Israelites that he would increase Abraham's seed, and we went over those scriptures last time to show those, and if I can call those up really quickly. Genesis 12:2, it says, I will make you a great nation. That's the promise that God gave to Abraham. Genesis 22:17 says, I will surely bless you, and I will multiply your descendants like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Okay, so he's talking about increasing Abraham's numbers. And then let's not forget Exodus 1:12. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. Okay, so we had God's promise here to increase Abraham's seed. So where are we going with this? We had small numbers. They needed the numbers to get up, one, for survival. And then second, on top of that, God made a promise to the Israelites that he was going to multiply their seed. Okay. Also with Abraham, we see that we start to have a formalized religion of Judaism in monotheistic religion. So a second contextualization. So one is population regrowth. They needed to get the numbers up. And in order to do that, they need to focus on procreation. So procreation, that would mean sex would be based primarily and solely for the purpose of having children. Okay, so no recreational sex, all right, in order, and not just for fun. Next, it was the new religion. Okay, so new religion of Judaism, and prior to the monotheistic one living God in formal religion, there was widespread across the planet or continent before the flood. And then even after the flood, people got back into polytheistic religions. And that's when Moses threw the tablets down, right? Because they built that carven statue of gold, right? Yeah. So people believed in polytheistic religions where they had all of the multiple gods. And so now they were formulating, there should be only one God, the living God, and there should be no other God before me, right? And so God then comes with the commandments of what that the people should follow. So in doing so, they also needed to make a distinction between themselves and the polytheistic, or people who practice polytheistic religion. So they began to do that with the holiness laws of what they could eat, how they should dress, how women should style their hair, whether you should wear jewelry or not, and also sexual behavior. So sexual behavior was twofold. Within polytheistic religions, particularly the Greek and Roman cultures, also in African countries and on the African continent, male-male relationships between an older man and a younger boy or youth, called pederasty, was normal. It was widespread and it was practiced. It was a part of rituals of kind of mentoring, particularly with soldiers, in training young boys in war. And so they would have that mentorship that sometimes involved sexual relationship between the young boy and the older man. And so that was practiced throughout those cultures, and it was considered normal. It wasn't a sin. It wasn't wrong. It was just normal for them, right? So now that you had those in the monotheistic religion, they're saying, well, we're going to be different. We won't do that. There's no male-male sex. There's no female-female sex. Okay, so those were the two conceptualizations that we had. So one, young religion, we need to make a distinction. We're going to act and dress and behave like this, separate from the others who are polytheistic in belief. And second, we need to procreate so we can get the numbers of humans up so that our species can survive. Okay, we'll go to the third contextualization for today. Did a lot of background there for you, but want to pull that in. Okay, so here we will go with the third contextualization that we will have. And I'll do a reading for you on today. Okay, here we go. For my third and final contextual framing, I asked the question, why were Levitical laws prohibiting same-sex sexual activity primarily directed towards males? Yeah. It has been widely observed among theologians that the Levitical